raised earlier on, collective challenges to reduce the brain drain, promote circulation and accelerate brain gain. Because 1/3 of qualified scientists and engineers who are born and trained in developing countries move to industrial countries. And then also picking up something which is absolutely important and we are still trying to deal with in Britain, which is that the business of women in science here, including the full participation of women. We still have initiatives in Britain, and we need those initiatives to keep women in science. 65% of the undergraduates who do biology in Britain are women. 65%. About 12% of our professors are women. In biology, we don't have a problem getting women into biology and into biomedical sciences. We have a problem keeping them in during the career stages. Not true with physics and maths and so on, who still need to get women into those disciplines. So again, very discipline specific, but we have a huge problem. We can work together on those. Some things have worked very well in Britain. We can transport those, steal them. Stealing ideas is not a problem, with good acknowledgement. And so women in world science, a very important aspect of what we're looking to do. Another thing here that though the African Academy of Sciences did was to launch this Alliance for Accelerating Excellence in Science, the ESA program. And from that program came, and here Tom Kiriuki, the director here in Nairobi, talking about this program. The initial focus is health research, partnering with some of the major funders such as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Wellcome Trust, discussing already the private sector, which Gordon alluded to and I'll allude to later on, in terms of supporting science in Africa, to help researchers develop their careers, build capacity, etc., etc. And this program came with funding. And of course, you've just seen that one of the first major pieces of funding from that academy, organised by it, and given confidence for the funders to fund it, came to Gordon and the University of Ghana. And it was a great pleasure to sort of work with Gordon over these and provide a little bit of help as he orchestrated a really major achievement in pulling one of these awards to Ghana. Now when you look, that brings good news. Africa News programs hail this man here. Don't you think? I mean, he's sort of, you know, Vice Chancellor, watch out. So what you see here is that it's good news for the University of Ghana, but it's good news for Africa, and it's a really important issue. He can't get too big in his boots, but on the other hand, this is important. Celebrating success is very, very important. And celebrating African success in Africa, critical. When you look, of course, that academy is doing something else, which has been alluded to again this morning. Things such as good financial grant practice. Not only doing science, but bringing along, you heard Gordon speak about the need for administration, good administration of a large program. Not just administration, but administrative leadership. That an administrator, sometimes people call them or have a phrase like it's a derogatory word, it's an administrator. Administrators really move the lever on programs. If they believe in research, that every single thing about the administration is to facilitate research in the laboratory. Once you've got that kind of good grant and other administrators, they're facilitating, they are catalytic. So capacity building is not just about scientists doing science, but how you enable that scientist to do science. Do the supplies come on time? Do you get disposal done properly? Etc., etc. All of those things. Does it work? And that takes a lot of capacity building as well as doing science. And it's great to see that this programme has recognised that. And it's something, though, that needs to be formally recognised, and we'll talk about at our meeting over the next few days. But when you look at capacity building, it comes almost certainly with selectivity. Selectivity in grants and studentships and fellowships. Some people will not get grants. Studentships and fellowships, institutional matching support. It will be selectivity in a university. A vice-chancellor will have to pick some departments to get more resource than others. It will not work if you don't have selectivity. And in a country will have to select some universities or facilitate some universities. And the Vice-Chancellor spoke about the African research universities. It's an inevitable fact. And it's not a bad fact that some places will do more research and better research than others. That does not mean that teaching is in some ways devalued. I will not stand aside to anybody in the defence of good teaching in universities. I will not yield to anyone on the quality of teaching being important. But research has to be integrated with that teaching, and universities have to be very clear about what their roles will be. So we need to make wise, evidence-based and transparent choices as we build capacity. And here an African scientist from the World Agroforestry Centre in Kenya is talking here about investing in peer review. Strengthening African scientists' capacity to conduct credible peer review is just one small step to improving the quality of the continent's science and the building the skills of the continent's scientists. And this really is about how to do good peer review in an open, transparent and honest way. Look at the UK. This map is an out-of-date map of all of the universities of Britain. It's out of date because you should add another 20 to these. And all of those universities are in London. It's all there. And these are the universities around here. But if you go to the Medical Research Council and you look at where their major research units and centres are, it's just this small cluster of about 10 across the country. 150 universities, the MRC does its major investment only in 10. Sometimes by decision, often by just accumulation of the fact that more researchers want to go to centres of excellence, and so it builds. Look at the Biotechnology and Biological Sciences Research Council at the top 10 UK universities ranked by annual funding. It's built in. 2013 to 14, Manchester, Cambridge, UCL, London, Nottingham, Edinburgh, Imperial, Oxford, Glasgow, Bristol, Warwick. 1 year later, it changes a little bit, but Manchester, Edinburgh, Cambridge, UCL, Nottingham, Oxford, Imperial, Bristol, Warwick, Glasgow. They move around a bit, but in effect, you know, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy now. These universities are the big research universities in Britain, right? Okay, they get the grants. There are more people there. Sometimes it's size, sometimes it's quality. And the other thing is that when you look at some of our major research institutes in Norwich, in plant sciences, in biology, in Edinburgh, the Roslin Institute where Dolly the sheep was cloned and so on, and looking around Babraham here and so on, and in London, in Cambridge with the Medical Research Council Laboratory of Molecular Biology. All of these major institutes are closely aligned with a university. So Ghana University of Ghana, Noguchi Memorial Institute for Medical Research Interactions, that will be key. That's a classic example of where an institute and a university can work very closely together in an integrated way. And that's one of the things that's been excellent in Britain in terms of developing high-quality centres, to have not just a teaching university and a research university, but embedded within it, to have research institutes. A clear example of good capacity building. But also another example of good capacity building is leveraging funds. And it's great to the World Bank. It's great for the World Bank to fund research. It's great for the Wellcome Trust to fund research. But the universities and charities and so on should always be looking to leverage those funds. And Gordon's right when he's asked, what do your local funders do for you? What's your university doing for you? What's your government doing for you? Because leveraging funds is part of capacity building. And here's two examples from Britain, both of which I know very well. In Britain we have things like the BBSRC, which funds biosciences, the Biotechnology and Biological Sciences Research Council, is focused very much on innovative biology and biomedical sciences, but actually also on collaborations with industry. So it has over 150 studentships a year, which can only be given if a collaboration is established with an industrial partner. And the industrial partner, the commercial partner, the pharmaceutical company, the food company or whatever, funds part of that scholarship. So the Research Council, government money here, leverages industrial money, but also makes a connection between academic research and research which is good for that industry. The student also sees the context by spending at least 3 months of their PhD in the industrial company, learning how they do research, or even just learning about the company. So these are called CASE awards, Collaborative Awards in Science and Engineering. A very important aspect of how government money leverages private money, sponsorship of those, but also how projects are developed between academia and industry. And then over here you see a charity called the Leverhulme Trust, which has funded quite a number of things in Africa. And the Leverhulme Trust, whose money was left by Lord Leverhulme 100 years ago, who founded Unilever as a company, then they fund early career fellowships. And they will only fund those if the university puts in 50% of the money. So here's a charity saying, we want to fund early career fellowships, but we'll only give you one in your university if you will fund half of it. Now again, it's not just about money. It's about connectivity. It's about saying to university, do you really care about this young person that you are nominating? Have you peer reviewed them? And if you have, then put your money where your mouth is. Don't just think that actually we'll do this for you. Commit, and let's work together. I think you'll see capacity building more and more of this, and Gordon's right to point out the business of the commercial sector. The commercial sector can certainly do more in Africa, but it needs to be taught what to do. There needs to be programs that we need to invent, you need to invent that they can engage with. And those programs, so scientists, universities and government need to develop the mechanisms whereby easy funds can be given for programs that people have confidence in. And so that's, I think, a challenge to all of us in the room, not a challenge to the companies. But there's not just the companies that work in Africa and sell in Africa, but major companies who actually, Africa is really not on their agenda, need, and I think are useful targets for actually that kind of leveraging of funds and being interested in supporting science in Africa. And for instance, you can go to the web and just look easily, and this is an unfair thing because I just clicked and I just picked up one company. And that company is DSM. DSM is a Dutch company. It's a really great company. But I just thought, since they did have a really nice set of slides on their website about how they're interested in their world company, I just thought, well, what do they do in Africa? And here they are. It's a science-driven company. Started off with Hochschild and Larosse vitamins, which were bought in the 1930s, and Gist Brocades, biotechnology and the life sciences. They're in the polymers and energy and material science. So vitamins, carotenoids, enzymes, minerals, biotech, etc., etc. And embedded in this slide presentation is a map. And Africa, well, it's a bit embarrassing, really. There's just nothing there. Now, okay, this is the global presence, which seems to be sort of a bit not global to me. But anyway, let's not be... Now, I'm not having a pot at DSM. You could do this for all sorts. But I think the issue is, this is an opportunity. This is a real opportunity to say to a company like this, a major company, $2,700 million of turnover last year. Hey, we're here and we've got some really interesting science that you might be interested in. And just to start connections. So I think it's up to us to do this, not to just expect people to naturally do it ourselves. But I think there's a lot of catalytic activity that we can do out there. Science to policy was spoken about earlier on, very much a capacity building. Here's a workshop in South Africa, an excess of 500 applicants for 40 delegate spots. And that just shows again the interest in not only capacity building for science and science research and health sciences, but now how to develop that into policies and the type of effectiveness in policy making for governments. I put this slide in just to say, again, we don't have any of the problems, probably. Any of the solutions in Britain. We might have another few. Funders need to get better at getting capacity building and science into their agenda. Here is the House of Commons Science and Technology Committee, where MPs bring people and they look to interrogate and they produce reports on various agendas. And here's the report of the session of 2012 to 13 on building scientific capacity for development. So they brought and they took evidence from the community for about 3 months, and then they brought the members of the Department for International Development, DFID. This is our government department in Britain. What did they say? What's their first conclusion of this report from the House of Commons Science and Technology Committee? We welcome the many scientific capacity building activities that the department, that DFID and its partners are involved in. It's our view that scientific capacity building is tremendously important in international development. We are therefore disappointed by the lack of explicit reference to both science and capacity building in DFID's report, UK Aid, Changing Lives and Delivering Results, which publicly sets out the government's new direction for UK aid. So I definitely do not come to Ghana and say you've got to get science and capacity into your government policy, right? Okay. Here's my House of Commons colleagues and MPs who, with an interest in science, berating the development group in Britain for actually not thinking about science and that day. So that's a very important issue. How do you recognise success? Well, when the Delta programs were produced, Simon Kay, as head of international operation at the Wellcome Trust, talked about the deltas and said, we are clear what success in the long term, 15 to 20 years, will look like. Researchers will be trained through the Wellcome Trust independently to win funding, and will independently win funding. And they hope it's from the Wellcome Trust. That the outputs of research are translated into health policy that improves lives, and that African governments, institutions and individuals will take a greater stake in funding and supporting African science. So that's the Wellcome Trust 10 to 15 year horizon successes. What are ours? Well, much but not all about capacity building is about money. But universities and governments and individuals such as ourselves can do a lot by innovation, for instance. We can build effective graduate school policies and develop graduate education as a pedagogic structure, influenced by but very distinct from undergraduate curriculum. It's something that we've had to do in Britain. The US had good graduate education in a structured manner well before the UK, and in the last 30 years we've had to focus on graduate education as a discipline in our universities, research universities. And that's something also that Africa needs to do. It needs to think about graduate education and how it's going to handle it. We can recognise excellence in teaching and research and be comfortable with developing and supporting excellent people and departments. It is selective. It does mean you have to support good people. Science, as we do it, is not a democracy. And doing science is also, in general, not a democracy. You will meet people of high intelligence, but no judgment. The people you want to support have high intelligence and high judgment. That's very important. And how you pick those out in your university is one of the great challenges of being a Vice Chancellor. It's tough. It's very tough. You can build new laboratories, and I really applaud the University of Ghana for what I've seen develop on this campus over the 11, 12 years that I've been coming here. That investment in new laboratories which will attract really good scientists to want to come and work here. Very important. Congratulations, and that has to continue. And governments have to continue to support research universities in their countries. Learning to be selective. One can't do everything. Encouraging entrepreneurship and small business ventures. Yes, the Wellcome Trust wants the outcomes to be letters in Nature and so on and so forth of the research. But people will go off and do all sorts of different things in science. And one thing they must do in developing capacity is go off and be entrepreneurs. Set up small companies. Set up a company in Ghana which actually just connects and allows scientific supplies to come into the country quickly, etc. Set up a company in support of equipment, chemical synthesis, small chemicals being synthesized in Ghana rather than bought in. Companies like that kind of small business ventures. So the University of Ghana, in a few years' time, should not only have great research laboratories, but a biotechnology incubator, a chemical incubator building where people work and set up small companies, and where there's economic expertise and business expertise, and then they spin out those companies in the premises off the campus. And those kind of technology centres, many universities have started to develop those, to develop regional capacity in Britain and the US. You'll need to leverage funds. It's very important to recognise not just the top-down initiatives, but the bottom-up ones. And really, in closing, it's really for me about what the African Institute wants. Look that it will have a strategic plan that informs and encourages organisations, individuals to continue to work with it. And it really is about what that university, particularly say the University of Ghana as we're here, wants to do. Once it's got its decision, then it needs to influence people like myself, institutions and so that to work with it on its ambitions. But capacity is much more than really about money or science or whatever. The major issue in closing is it's about people for me. It's more about people than money. And the people are government ministers, research university leaders, academic leaders, business leaders, funding leaders, and all of those are in the room. The most important people in this room are the students and postdoctoral fellows, by far and away, because The future is yours, not ours. And you have joined a biomedical discipline in the 21st century. The 20th century was a century, the first 40 years of which were owned by physics. The first 40 years of this century are owned by biology. It's about biology, life sciences, and biomedical sciences. And really the first almost half of this century that you're living in, being trained for, is about life sciences. And you will face a number of decisions. What will that life sciences be? It could be the biology of hope. It could be the biology of biotechnology, of engineering, of healthcare improvements, and so on. Science making a huge difference. It could be the biology of decline of the planet. That the environment becomes worse, that we have climate change which we can't control. It could be the biology, in a third view of the biology of this century, it could be the biology of distinction. The biology where the haves have more and the have-nots have less. Three kinds of biology. I vote for the biology of hope, and I think, for me, the hope is that you, as the students and postdocs being trained in this innovative program, that you will accept that challenge of the biology of hope of the 21st century and build capacity for all of us. Thank you.
I want to thank Professor Keith Gall for his presentation. The next keynote address will be delivered by Dr. Abraham Hodgson, who is the Director of Research and Development Division, Ghana Health Service, and he'll be speaking on health research priorities in Ghana.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk on the health research priorities of Ghana. I'm the Director of the Research and Development Division of the Ghana Health Service, and our mandate is to research into health problems facing the people of Ghana and inform policy decisions. As part of our mandate, we are to identify the health priorities and come out with a research agenda which will help address these priorities. Now, the relevance of setting a research agenda is to provide a roadmap for research in which people can buy, assist in the mobilization of appropriate resources, contribute to the development of an implementation plan. It's also useful for monitoring and evaluation purposes, and useful for impact assessment. I'll walk you through the process we went through setting this agenda to address the health priorities of the country. It involves some preliminary consultations and activities, followed by followed by 7 steps of various activities covering over a year. The document covers the 5-year period and begins a year after the health sector medium-term development plan and will end a year after that. The health sector medium-term development plan is what defines what will happen within the health sector over the period that it operates. We requested for this document from the Ministry of Health, which we acquired eventually, and then we reviewed all the existing research agenda documents that have been produced, and also had consultation with the previous director of the Research and Development Division, who had developed the previous one. We then consulted heads of institutions within the Ghana Health Service, district directors, regional directors, to come out with what they thought were health priorities within the sector. They reviewed their annual reports, their DIMS, that's the District Health Management Information System data, and also the diseases they've been seeing in their outpatients and the communities, and came out with a list of topics that they thought should get into the priority list. The next stage was to see how we could prioritize this list and align it to the health sector medium-term development plan. We called a stakeholder meeting of people from the Ghana Health Service, which was made up of representatives from all the levels, the district, the regional, the national, as well as the health facilities. We put them into 6 groups. Each group was to take one component of the health sector medium development plan. They were to review all the topics that had come out and then prioritize them on a scale of 0 to 5. 5 being the one with the highest priority and 0 being the one that we may have to leave for another time. After this,